This is G Corp Outis. An identity that most people would honestly consider kind of mediocre at best. Like, she's one of the very few support identities we have in the game. She's a pretty meh support identity. Her speed range is above average, and her entire kit revolves around supporting others. It's obvious she's not meant to be good. But what if I told you she's actually one of the best identities in the game? I'm not kidding when I say this, she actually is really goddamn strong. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, Vita, how is G Corp Outis the best when she obviously can't do as much damage as the one Meursault grips Sinclair? The short answer is she's incredibly broken under very specific circumstances. The long answer? The entire video. As said before, G Corp Outis is one of the very few support identities we have in the game. I mean, just take a look at her skills, to be honest. Everything is built around supporting others in some sort of way, rather than actually being good herself. Let's take a look at skill 1, for example. Order is a slightly mediocre skill, rolling only a whopping 10 compared to the average, which is usually about an 11. Although admittedly she does gain 2 coin power if the enemy has 5 sinking, but that is a very niche circumstance. Like, you're not gonna get that unless you're actively graced by the holiness that is either Molar Ishmael or the Edgy Rodion. Her second skill, Onslaught Command, is when it gets a bit more interesting. Being a 1 coin skill that has a base power of 10 and rolling up to a 16, this is actually a little bit above average for a skill 2, surprisingly enough. Sadly, the damage option she provides is only an on-hit effect, but to be fair, she still does apply 1 attack power up to the ally with the lowest speed, which is honestly a quite rare status effect to see, so it's still valuable to some extent. G Corp Outis' skill tree is actually very funny. Her skill tree focus comes in rolling a 26 and applies 2 attack power down on the enemy she hits, which is actually a lot. This power down is equal to Crow's Eye View and nearly rolls as high as it, which is hilarious. But what's more hilarious is her animation. So you know when she attacks, she quite literally yells at someone? Now you may ask me, what's so special about that, Vader? Well, what if I were to tell you that she's likely yelling at over 200 decibels? Yes, that's right, G Corp Outis is 60 decibels louder than a f***ing airplane taking off. I'm not kidding when I say that. Typically, sounds at 170 to 200 decibels are loud enough to cause permanent hearing damage, but considering that she can quite literally yell at people, they just instantaneously die on the spot, she's likely yelling much louder than that as well. So the next time you put her in your team, remember that everyone else around her is probably suffering from permanent hearing damage. But hey, at least Dante doesn't have ears, am I right? Lastly, her defensive skills is Slot Defend, that has a base power of 9 and a coin power of 4. Which is below average and may not look important, but trust me, it's important for consistently activating her passive. Which, as you'll see, her passive is a surprise tool that will help us later. Now, you may be wondering to yourself, why did I even tell you all this information? I told you it so you have an idea of how actual dog shit her kit is, and actually dealing any kind of damage whatsoever. I mean, just take a look at all of her skills. All of her skills literally consist of a single coin. Her highest damage that she could possibly do in a single turn is about 26 damage. But well, Vader, how can you claim that she's the strongest identity in the game if she doesn't even compare to Sinclair the slightest? Clearly there's a difference between Sinclair's skill tree and G Corp Outis' skill tree. I mean, like, at the maximum potential, Sinclair can roll about 90 damage. Meanwhile, G Corp Outis rolls a 26 and proceeds to cry in a corner. To that, I have to say, you haven't looked at her passive yet. Her combat passive is actually, like, one of the more impactful passives in the game, and I'm surprised no one actually knows about it that much. You see, when activating Slot Resonance, she immediately subscribes to Vader and gets a 3-star identity in her next 10 pull. Amazing, right? You can get such great benefits from just subscribing. But okay, actually, to be real, she just subscribes and gives 2 haste to herself and 2 adjacent allies. The thing is about this passive is that it actually makes her ridiculously broken with what I'm about to tell you. So 2 haste by itself usually isn't that much. Your speed increases by 2, which sure is great for clashing with particularly fast enemies, like those godforsaken gloom mechanisms that roll 6 speed for no goddamn reason at all. But you see, 2 haste can actually change a lot and make her the best identity in the game. Just bear with me here, okay? You may have thought that she's the best because of her own capabilities, but no, it's actually the capabilities she unlocks for others with her passive. So with that, I would like to introduce you to the identities that put the great in G Corp Outis. This is the team I've come up with that benefit the most from G Corp Outis, and it's actually the team that inspired this video. The question is, how do these identities benefit from G Corp Outis? First, starting off with Sinclair. Her speed is a 4 to a 7 and her skill 1 gains 2 coin power at 7 plus speed. Without Outis, she would have a 25% chance to naturally gain this benefit with her speed. But with 2 haste, her speed essentially becomes a 6 to a 9, essentially giving her 25% chance to gain coin power on that skill. Her skill 3 on the other hand relies on her having 10 plus speed, which sure, 6 to 9 speed range doesn't reach, but it helps it be more feasible to reach if she uses her skill 1 or skill 2. Also, it should be mentioned with how ridiculously quick this team is, her passive is very likely to activate most of the times actually, giving her quite a significant damage boost. Sinclair is a little bit of a special case. He doesn't really gain coin power from being at a certain threshold, more like how much faster he is compared to the other enemies he is clashing against. So it depends on your enemy. But with Outis' combat passive, his speed essentially goes from a 4 to an 8 all the way up to a 6 to a 10, which I don't think I need to mention, but that is ridiculously high and will basically net you the maximum amount of benefit anytime you're clashing against literally anything, because I guarantee you that 10 speed literally outspeeds anything in the game we have so far. And much like Sinclair, his passive is going to be always active, considering how ridiculously fast this team is going to be. Hook Office Hong Lu and G Corp Outis actually make a pretty great pair that I don't think many people realize. Hong Lu is similar to Sink Don Quixote, with his skills becoming stronger if he's over 6 speed. Skill 1, however, gains 1 final power up if he has 2 haste. And oh boy, would you look at who specifically gives 2 haste to other adjacent allies. That's right, it's G Corp Outis. His skill 2 and skill 3 on the other hand gain benefits if he's over 6 speed. Normally, with a speed range of 3 to 7, it's quite inconsistent. However, with Outis merely existing right next to him, his speed range suddenly changes from a 5 to a 9, which gives him an 80% chance to roll 6 or higher speed, and gives him +1 coin power on both skills, which is ridiculously strong, actually. Literally all of Hook Office Hong Lu skills benefit from having high speed or having haste, so they actually make a pretty great duo, which not a lot of people realize. As for R Corp Heathcliff, I really don't think I need to elaborate on how good he is with having high speed, but regardless, I'm gonna explain anyways. He has a speed range of 3 to 7 normally, but with Outis merely existing, his speed range changes from a 5 to a 9, giving him essentially an 80% chance to gain extra coin power on a skill 2 and 3. And I don't think I need to elaborate on how much of a goddamn difference that makes. Lastly, our Corp Meursault. He is kind of the odd one out in this team, to be honest, but I'm still including him nonetheless, because he benefits from going fast. But really, he is quite boring. His speed range is a 3 to a 5, and his skill 1 benefits from 25% extra damage if at 7 speed, which is very unlikely to benefit you much at all. And his skill 2 applies 2 extra bleed count if it's at 7 bleed, which sure, I guess it can synergize with Hook Office Hong Lu to some extent, but it's not much to be honest. A great replacement for him will be W Corp Yi-Sang, or honestly any kind of Yi-Sang identity that has slot in some capacity, to help with activating G Corp Outis' passive. And of course he has Crow's Eye View. I don't think I need to elaborate how strong that is in this very specific team, that relies on haste, with an ego that gives haste to literally everyone. Our question is, how can G Corp Outis outperform 90 raw damage if the best she can do is 26 raw damage? Now you know how I've just spent the better part of about 2 minutes explaining how the other identities benefit from G Corp Outis' mere presence alone? When you think about it, it is basically her that allows the other identities to be so great, and for them to deal a little bit extra damage. For example, let's take a look at Rabbit Heathcliff. I will show the calculations on screen so I don't have to talk about it for 20 minutes, but Rabbit Heathcliff without any speed, at the maximum will do 48 raw damage with a skill 3. However, let's say that the 2 haste from G Corp Outis the previous turn allows him to have 6 speed, and that he gains 4 coin power up on the skill. He will instead do 99 raw damage with the skill now. So this essentially means that with G Corp Outis, Rabbit Heathcliff can do an extra 51 raw damage, which is quite ridiculous actually when you think about it. This 51 raw damage was essentially generated by G Corp Outis standing right next to Rabbit Heathcliff and just going, "You can do it, buddy, I believe in you," and he goes a little bit faster. If we take a look at the kind of damage Sinclair deals, it is nowhere near 90 damage. Now, you know how she buffs the 2 adjacent allies? Keyword here being 2. Now let's say hypothetically Sinclair is also included in the calculations. Sinclair is a bit iffy, relying on his speed over the enemies, so we'll say for these calculations now, without G Corp Outis, he gains no benefits, and with G Corp Outis, he gains the highest coin power possible, considering he can roll up to 10 speed. Now let's take a look at his skill tree. The maximum potential his skill tree can achieve without speed is 49 raw damage. However, if we add G Corp Outis into the mix and he gains extra speed, he could potentially deal up to 72 raw damage. This translates into 23 extra damage if Sinclair is benefiting from G Corp Outis. And putting Rabbit Heathcliff's extra damage and Sinclair's extra damage together, we get to 74 extra damage. 16 off from the one who shall grip Sinclair. I guess that's it then, video over. You really thought I was gonna sit here and accept that G Corp Outis is worse than the one who shall grip Sinclair after the title literally says secretly the best identity in the game? No, did you forget? She has her own skills as well. Let's say hypothetically, on top of that 74 extra damage she generates, she also uses a skill tree, allowing her to deal 26 extra damage, which effectively makes her deal 100 damage, beating out the one who shall grip Sinclair by 10 whole raw damage. And is thus the best identity in the game. Before I get to the afterthoughts of this video, I'd like to ask you to perhaps like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video so far. I've put a lot of effort into making it, so it would mean a lot to me. This is the very first voiced video I do, and you know, by liking and subscribing, you show me your support and show me that you want to see more of this content. Besides, I plan to hit 20k subscribers by the end of the year, so if you could reach that would mean so much to me. Anyway, on to the actual afterthoughts. Honestly, what mainly motivated me to make this video is a moment I had about 4 months back or so, where I was bored in Mirror Dungeon and wanted to do some gimmick teams, and I thought, hey, how about we put together the fastest team possible? And that's how I got to this team, actually. And what kind of inspired this whole video. This team is actually pretty strong and it's genuinely really fun to run, actually. If you have some time to spare and want to do a Mirror Dungeon run, consider running this team, to be honest. It's genuinely fun. And I was genuinely impressed by how good G Corp Outis makes this random mishmash of a team, and so I wanted to make a video, like, entirely dedicated to her. Looking at it now, it's even more impressive considering G Corp Outis can outperform and Sinclair. Now, one can argue, actually, G Corp Outis outperforms him under very specific and niche circumstances. To that I say, the aim of the video was to see if G Corp Outis can outperform Sinclair at all, not to see how consistent it is. But still, that doesn't discredit G Corp Outis, considering this team is actually really good. Also, as stated before, our Corp Meursault is pretty bad for this team, but fits in anyways. If you want to replace him or are missing any of the identities in the team, I would highly recommend replacing them with a Yi-Sang identity, considering the haste from Crow's Eye View makes it one of the best ego in the game for this specific team. Also, one last thing that I would unironically recommend, and I'm not joking when I say this, bear with me here, Lifetime Stew is an ego I could recommend running for this team. Specifically because he applies 2 haste on tail coins, which actually makes him really strong. And speaking of Lifetime Stew Sinclair, if this video performs well enough, and if there's a lot of support, the next video I'm going to make looking in depth into Limbus Company game mechanics will be about Lifetime Stew and how it is better than Vloedzaak Faust. Yes, I'm not kidding when I say this, I've done the calculations, it is actually better than Vloedzaak Faust. If you want to see that video, leave a like and subscribe as well, since it shows me that you really like these kinds of videos and want to see more of it. Also, since I made a video looking at game mechanics, I know that one of the most common comments under this video is going to be, haha, I'm an ESGOO clone. And you know what? I'm just gonna straight up steal his outro. The video ends